the DMPS Return to Learn plan. My name is Tom Ahart, Superintendent of Schools for Des Moines Public Schools. We have a team of folks from the district on the line here. A couple of notes before we get started. If you are on a laptop or notebook device, if you hover your cursor toward the bottom center of your screen, you will see a little menu of icons. Over the course of the entire course of this presentation, if you click on the little word bubble, you may enter comments and questions into the chat box, and we will try to answer as many of those as possible through the course of the meeting. Any that we don't get answered, we will capture, because we are recording this meeting, and so any of those questions that don't receive an answer, we will capture and answer and place in our frequently asked questions page on our website at dmschools.org/return-to-learn. We'll also be capturing those questions that we did answer and adding those to the frequently asked questions portion of the website as well. We want to thank you for the patience and grace that you've shown over the last 4 months. The end of the school year was a year ago, to me, unimaginable, but we had this unanticipated pandemic, and the situation relative to the pandemic, got increasingly worse through May,
right.
And it just was not safe to
give you one of my earbuds, or I can put on speaker.
Or I'm gonna ask folks to
works best for you.
to press mute.
Are you taking notes or anything?
I will.
I'm just going to ask everyone in that same menu bar at the center bottom of your screen, you'll see a microphone icon. If you could just click on that to make sure that you are muted. We have a lot of people on this call, and even small extraneous background noise builds to make the conversation unintelligible if folks aren't muted. Toward the end of the meeting, we anticipate having some time to do live question and answer. And at that time, if you will click on the raise your hand icon, it's just a single hand icon at the center bottom of your screen. And we will answer as many live questions as we can before our hour is up. The plan that you're going to see today is the basic structure of the plan. We still have many details to flesh out, and that's really the purpose of these meetings. We want to hear your questions, answer questions, hear your concerns, and fill out the remaining details. And there are hundreds, if not thousands. Fill in those remaining details with the direct input of those most impacted by them. Some factors that have that what this plan entails are a few. The pandemic, we don't know. Nobody knows exactly what state we will be in Polk County when school starts. The most recent data from Polk County is not encouraging. We peaked somewhere late April, early May, and then cases started to go down until about the third week of June. And they've been on the rise since then. And we're anticipating an even steeper increase when we get to the next couple of weeks because of anticipated uptick relative to the 4th of July. So we continue to monitor that very closely with our local hospital systems, as well as Polk County Health and the Iowa Department of Public Health. So we'll continue to monitor that, as we will all through the year. So the current status of the pandemic is one major factor that impacted our return to learn plan. Another very important factor are the health conditions of our students and our staff. We do serve a number of students with significant pre-existing health conditions that make them particularly vulnerable to the negative impact of COVID-19 diagnosis. And we have in total a little less than 5,000 employees. 1,400 of those employees are currently receiving treatment either for cancer, hypertension, diabetes, or a cardio or respiratory diagnosis. And so those folks are also more vulnerable to the harmful impacts of a COVID-19 diagnosis. And then, of course, individuals of a certain age are in a higher risk category simply by chronology, and we employ a number of folks who also fall into that category. So our goal is to provide absolutely as much educational opportunity as we can while protecting the health and safety of all of our students, their families, our staff, and the broader community. When we're functioning in normal fashion in Des Moines Public Schools, there are about 40,000 individuals going in and out of our schools on a daily basis, and a large number of the staff reside outside of the district, and so they're going back home and you know, spending time with their families and then coming back. So an exposure in Des Moines Public Schools can rapidly spread to the entire metro area. So we feel a particular responsibility in that regard as well. There is nothing more than that we want as a team than to bring all of our students back full time every day and resume business as usual. But we know that that's not possible right now. There is guidance from a multitude of organizations. In fact, I heard an epidemiologist last evening call it a quilt of guidance. It's a lot of the guidance is meaningful and based in science, and a lot of it contradicts other guidance that's also steeped in science and based in research. So it's been really difficult to set a course that will please everyone, and in fact, I believe it's impossible probably to please everyone. Everyone's situation is unique. Everyone's preferences are unique. Everyone's health circumstances are unique. So what we have is the plan for the beginning of the year. There will be two main choices that we'll ask families to make for each of their students. And once we have registration completed, we'll have a lot clearer picture of where we are, and we will continue to look for ways to broaden opportunities as we move forward. But this initial plan, we wanted to ensure that we were under promising and over delivering so that you could at least count on for sure that what we say we're going to offer, we indeed will offer, and then we will actively on a daily basis looking for ways to open up the district incrementally as quickly as we can. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to our Associate Superintendent, Mr. Matt Smith. He's going to walk you through a presentation. Again, it's like a 30,000 foot view. We're referring to it as. We know there are thousands of questions still to be answered. Some of those we can't answer yet. Some of those we could answer, but we've chosen not to because we want to answer those questions being directly influenced by all of you, so that we're making the best decisions possible to meet the needs of your families. So with that, I'll turn things over to Matt.
Thanks, Tom. Good morning, everybody. My name is Matt Smith, and I'm the Associate Superintendent for Des Moines. And this morning, for our time together, I will facilitate the informational and the presentation, and of course, our conversation. So thanks again for joining us. While I pull up my screen to share with you, I do want to lift up a couple of particular logistics about the actual format of today's conversation. So Tom mentioned early on in the conversation that there's a chat bar. So again, if you scroll with your cursor to the middle of your screen, there's a little chat icon box. If you click on that, within the chat, we actually have staff that are on the chat as well. And so we would love for you to place your questions, your concerns, your thoughts within the chat. And that will do two things for us. Number one, we actually might be able to answer your question within this conversation in the chat. So while you're on the call. again, we do have staff actually that are in the chat, and so we'll do our very best to answer your question. The other thing that it will also do for the broader community is even if we can't answer your question, we will, at least at this time, we will pull that question out and create the themes to add to our frequently asked questions document that is on our website. And so we will place that question there, because if you have the question, it's incredibly likely that dozens, if not hundreds of other parents also have that question. And again, those questions are helping to inform the details of the plan as they're being fleshed out over the course of the next couple of weeks. So without further ado, we're going to jump into the plan. What we're going to do is provide you with, of course, the outcomes of today's conversation. But we wanted to start off by giving you some context and how we actually anchored our work and anchored our conversations as we developed this plan and the two options that we're going to provide for you today. So here are today's outcomes. Again, this is a high-level plan. This is the structure and the framework for the two options that we're going to discuss in deeper detail. So to begin with, the lenses that we approached our work with are threefold, and they're all interconnected with one another. The first lens that we approached this work with was a lens of equity. And again, we asked two very specific questions of one another and of the decisions within our plan. And those two questions are, who is advantaged and who's disadvantaged by this decision and by these plans? And so we do know that historically and even recently, a lot of our systems and our policies and our practices didn't create the equitable opportunity and outcomes for students, particularly our students of color. And so what we do know is that in our Return to Learn plan, what we cannot is return to is a system that doesn't serve all students equitably and justly. And so we continue to ask those questions: who is advantaged and who is disadvantaged by our plan to return? The other lens is of course, the lens of safety. And we continue to lift up the CDC guidelines. We continue to utilize those as our baseline. And so the plans that you will see today, the options, leverage and maximize the CDC guidelines so that we can continue to offer not only an emotional and mental health safety for our students and staff, but also that physical safety. And the third lens, of course, is achievement. As a Des Moines public school system, our primary core and charge is around achievement. And so we are a teaching and learning organizations, and so we need to continue to put forth a plan that best serves the educational needs of all of our students. And what that means is, and we'll talk a little bit about this in a few slides, is that we want to make sure that every student, regardless of the option that you choose as a family that best fits your needs, that students are provided with high quality instruction and equitable access to grade level standards-based curriculum. Deeply embedded in our conversations and in our planning are the results of our town hall, our anti-racist town hall meetings 2 weeks ago. So there were several findings within our town halls, but some of the findings that rose to the surface in every single conversation and that were incredibly loud and profound in our conversations with students, staff, and families and community in DMPS were that we needed to absolutely ensure that our Return to Learn plan emphasized and leveraged the need for social emotional learning supports, restorative practices, and our staff's ability and capacity to talk about race and social justice. And so you will find that that will be also a significant anchor in our Return to Learn plan. At a high level, the findings of our anti-racist town hall meetings.
No, they were just talking about school going back.
So just a quick reminder, and I did this actually on the last presentation too. I actually clicked my mute button, so it's really easy to click the mute and unmute unintentionally. So I want to make sure that everybody has their microphone clicked to mute your mic, and that would be great. Thanks so much. And again, if you accidentally click it, no worries. We'll keep moving through. So our anti-racist town hall findings, these are the primary findings, the four that lifted up to the surface of our conversations. And so we want you to see that we are absolutely looking at these findings and incorporating our next steps into our Return to Learn plan. I also want to point out that these next steps do not represent a comprehensive strategic plan for DMPS becoming an anti-racist town hall or an anti-racist school district. They're the first steps. These will be the initial steps that we will take as we develop a strategic anti-racist plan to move forward as a school district. We have a conviction about that, and we will pursue those endeavors relentlessly. Our core beliefs, I'll let you read through those. I'm not going to read through each one of them. I do want to lift up for this conversation the third bullet specifically regarding the resources and efforts. And again, what this speaks to is that all of our time and all of our energy are first being poured into creating the equitable access and opportunities for all students to engage in high quality instruction and standards-based grade level curriculum. We will not place additional resources and time and energy into providing more for the few when we have not ensured that all students have high quality access to instruction and standards-based curriculum. Our board goals. Less than 2 years ago, our board engaged in conversations, and this list of goals, picking up on some feedback. If you could just double check your mics real quick. Sometimes that just happens. So thanks so much. These goals were lifted up. And so again, recognizing that our policies and our practices and our curriculum weren't serving all students justly and equitably. And the result of that was that our Black male achievement is not the outcomes that we're looking for. And again, that's because of our practices and our policies and our curriculum weren't serving students well. And so we will continue to address those, and these goals will be at the forefront of every conversation. There is a fourth goal around social emotional learning. It's currently written as a management limitation. And so as we talk about the board goals, there are actually 4 of them, but 3 of them are written in the SMART goal format that you see on your screen right now. Last school year, we engaged in a series of conversations with about 150 staff, students, and families around a collaborative problem-solving process to ensure that we are putting in the proper levers and the research and database levers to support us meeting our board goals. And so what you have in front of you are the 7 levers categorized as the foundational tier and universal tier that all students must have in order to be ready and prepared for the most appropriate and conducive learning environment possible. So without further ado, this is just the context and the background for how we approached our work and how we anchored our conversations. So the Return to Learn plan, you received most likely the opportunity to engage in a survey around what you're comfortable with in terms of the Return to Learn plan. And so we just wanted to make sure that that we left it up for you. We had almost 75% of our parents respond to the survey. The survey was given back at the end of May and the first weeks of June. And we also had staff, about 78% of staff respond. We had a lower rate of student response from grades 5 through 11 than we desired, at just under 33%. One of the questions that we asked during that survey was, what is your willingness to return to a physical school building in August? And we certainly recognize that given the timeline of when that survey was given, end of May, first weeks in June, that we were asking you to predict 3 months in advance your comfort level with your child returning to a physical plant building. So what's in front of you now is the responses to that data broken down by family and then of course by staff. The bullet point that I also want to lift up in the data set is at the very bottom of this screen that speaks to nearly 76% of all respondent families believe that they could send their child to a modified school week. We did not indicate what that modified school week would look like, just knowing that there would be a blend of some sort of virtual and in-person learning. So again, 76% of parents and families responded that they would feel comfortable with that learning environment. So what that led us to in our conversations and in our planning were 2 options. And so we're going to dig into these 2 options for the rest of the conversation, and then also some wraparound services that we're working to provide for each of our families. July 13th, which would be on Monday, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this in a few more slides. The online registration process is going to begin in Des Moines, and we're going to ask families to think about which option is going to best serve your needs and your unique family dynamics. for the fall semester. One option is going to be a 100% fully virtual learning environment, and the other option is a hybrid model where there is a blend of in-person learning, but also some virtual learning for your student. So we're going to dig a little bit more deeply into each of these options and what it means at the level, whether you have an elementary student or a middle school student or a high school student. And we're also going to talk about pre-K. So the virtual model. Des Moines has actually had a virtual high school for almost 2 years, about a year and a half now. And so we have served high school students in a fully virtual model for the last year and a half. We've got a lot of successes from that model, but we've also have a lot of lessons learned for the last year and a half. So there's always been a plan since the inception of that virtual campus that we would have a K-12 virtual option for families in the future. Given the state of COVID-19 in the spring, it just forced us to accelerate those plans. And so what we are confident in today is that we can deliver a fully virtual K-12 option to families if that's going to be what best fits your needs and the unique needs of your family as we return in the fall. It is important to note that the curriculum that we use in the virtual campus is the same curriculum that we use in our comprehensive schools. And so it's not a separate curriculum. It is a separate staff. And so that's one of the specific points I want to lift up for each of us today is to know that if you feel like the fully virtual option is the best return to learn scenario and support for your family, if you're a student, for example, at Brubaker or at a Harding or at a North, you will still have a connection to those home campuses, but the staff that serves your student in a fully virtual campus will be part of the virtual campus staff. There's a director, there's counselors, there's teachers in the virtual campus itself that will serve your students. So it would not be a teacher from Brubaker or a teacher from Harding or North, for example, that would be interacting with your student if you choose the full virtual option. It will be a teacher that is in the virtual campus staffing formula. So it's important to know that. Now, what that doesn't mean, though, is that you don't have any connections or you lose your enrollment in your home campus. You keep your enrollment and you keep your connections. And so if your child is involved in activities at your home campus, that is still also available to you. We will continue to offer those opportunities as much as we possibly can, as long as they're safe. And we continue to look at those as those individual activities and sports to ensure that we're providing a safe environment for all of our students and all of our staff that are sponsors or coaches. But we want to make sure that you understand that if you choose the full virtual option, your teacher, if your home school is a Brubaker, it will not be a teacher that actually is at Brubaker. It will be a teacher in the virtual campus that will provide that individualized instruction for you. So let's jump a little bit into the hybrid model. So if we look at the K-8 hybrid model, in order to serve students and maintain the physical distancing guidelines that the CDC has put forth for all of us, we needed to split student body in half. And so what resulted in that was a cohort A and a cohort B. So I'm going to use my own children. I have 4 children in Des Moines Public Schools myself, and I'll use my own son, Sam, who will be in 7th grade. When I go to register Sam next week, if we choose the hybrid model, and Sam will be assigned a cohort. Many of you may have already received an assignment already, and we try to do that a little bit earlier on. But if you haven't, when you go to register, you will receive your cohort assignment in the K-8 model. And so Sam, as a 7th grader, if he's cohort A, what that means for Sam is that he is actually going to come to school for in-person learning on Mondays and on Tuesdays. On Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, Sam will actually receive virtual supports and be engaged in what we call asynchronous activities. So Sam will have some independent work that he will be engaged with. It might be through paper, it might be through the computer, it might be through videos, it might be a recorded lesson that was pre-recorded, it might be a resource through our Canvas student learning management platform. there's lots of various activities and asynchronous opportunities for students to engage in. But Sam's teacher that will support him will be his same teachers in the in-person learning as well as in the virtual environment. And so if Sam were assigned cohort B, however, then he would be in-person learning on Thursdays and Fridays, and then receive his virtual asynchronous activity supports on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. It is important to note that on Wednesdays, all students, all staff at all campuses will be fully virtual. And again, so that's just so that we can get into the buildings and provide a deep cleaning to disinfect classrooms and spaces. And so that's the reason for that. We feel like that we can do that in a full day and ensure that safe environment for when students return on Thursdays. It is important to note to recognize the distinction between what you may have experienced in the spring in terms of the virtual and the asynchronous activities and what you will experience actually in the fall. So in the spring, we had a voluntary learning model. And so what that meant is students were highly encouraged to engage in activities. They were provided with resources and websites and a review of previously covered topics. It also meant that we didn't take attendance and that we didn't take grades because it was a voluntary model. What you will experience in the fall, however, is a mandatory model. And so it will feel and it will look very, very different. It'll be far more structured, and there will be attendance taken every day, whether you are in person as a cohort A student or whether or not you are fully virtual in the rest of the week. We will take attendance. We will have students submit assignments. We will provide feedback and grades. We will cover new learning topics. And so we will move the work forward. We will move the learning forward in the fall, and it'll be significantly more structured for students because it's a mandatory model. So there is a stark difference between what you experienced in the spring and what you will experience in the fall. And that holds true for whether or not you're in the K-8 hybrid model or the fully virtual model. It's going to be a mandatory learning model for both in the fall. The high school model is a little bit different. And the reason for that is the enrollment capacity at our high schools. So even if we split the high school students into two cohorts, cohort A and cohort B, we still don't think, given our space limitations at the high schools, that we could actually keep students physically distanced and safe in the learning environment. And so therefore we were sort of relegated to move to serving students a quarter of them at a time. And so what you have in front of you is a schedule that brings ninth graders in on Monday. I also have a child that's going to be a ninth grader, so we'll use Lily as an example. Lily, going into the ninth grade, will actually go in person for her learning of the day on Mondays. On Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, Lily will be at home in a virtual environment within her asynchronous activities. If Lily has a class at Central Campus, and that's that middle tier there, she will actually go to in-person learning at Central Campus for some specific lab-based courses and actually take her lab-based course assessments at Central Campus in person on Fridays. And again, just the reason for that is to not create scheduling conflicts for students from their home campus to Central Campus. The reason why it's italicized in the actual presentation around Central Campus learning-based lab courses is because we do have a number of courses at Central Campus that require students to actually be in person to perform their assessments with the resources, the tools, and the curriculum that are actually in the classroom. And so another way of saying that is that these courses, many of them, just can't be done virtually. You have to be in the classroom to actually engage in the performance-based assessments utilizing the labs. And so examples of that are things like the marine science lab, wood shop, automotive. You have to be actually physically in the classroom to perform these lab-based assessments. So that's the reason for it.
I
Yes.
don't mean to interrupt you, but I think it's important to point out that this schedule has flipped and the PowerPoint just hasn't been updated yet. So some people in the chat had noticed that. So the most current schedule based on feedback is now online. So we'll get that updated here.
Yeah, thank you for that, Noel. And again, and that's just another example of the feedback that we're getting from families throughout this week's presentations is there were a number of questions about utilizing a different schedule for seniors rather than Friday. That actually informed changes to this plan already, and so it's already being updated. And so that just happened within the last 24 hours. So thanks for lifting that up, Noel. For Central Academy, for students, that's going to be fully virtual. So our Central Academy staff has been amazing, and they've been working now for many, many weeks and months on creating a fully virtual option for all of their courses. And that's for two reasons. One is because those courses can be fully virtual, and they don't require students to come into the classroom for lab-based performance assessments. The other reason that's important to note that's why we went fully virtual at Central Academy is we have students from all over the district in our secondary campuses that would congregate in those classrooms and those hallways. And so we were incredibly concerned about creating a higher risk of a student who could potentially test positive and then infect students from all over the district because of their interactions, and then rather containing the spread to one school or one classroom, we could potentially actually put students at all schools, at all secondary schools at risk if we allow that interaction. So that's the reason why Central Academy has moved to a fully virtual model. Preschool, we are prepared to offer a fully virtual online environment for preschool if that is indeed what is needed when we start back in the fall. However, the current enrollment for preschool is low enough that we do feel like we could actually bring all of our preschoolers back for a Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday in-person instructional and learning environment. Again, that's because our numbers are low, and if we bring all of our students that are currently enrolled for preschool back, we can still keep them safely distanced one another in the classroom. However, if that trend of the enrollment begins to increase, we will need to look at a similar K-8 model and assign cohorts, whereby half the preschoolers would come on Monday, Tuesday, and the other half would come on Thursday, Friday. We do continue to operate and interact with Drake University and a Head Start program, and we do know that they have capped students at 10 per class for Head Start. So we will continue to provide some information as we know and learn more about that. But it is important to note that if your child is enrolled in Head Start, they have capped it at 10 students per class. So as a family, if the hybrid model in K-8 or high school is what's right for you, or preschool, what is it that we will be doing in the schools in order to keep your child safe? So one thing is again, this model, the hybrid model and the return in-person model is about social distancing, right? Keeping that safe distancing in the classroom and learning environment and in the common spaces. So it's predicated on our ability to keep students distanced in classrooms and in the hallways during some of the limited transitions that we will have. But what we'll also do is we're going to require face coverings for all students and all staff. There's been a number of questions about whether or not face masks can replace, or can face shields replace face masks. Right now, the answer is no, that it wouldn't replace it, but you could do both. So you could feel free to have your student in a face mask and a face shield. We have some staff that will also be doing that very thing as well. And so we will provide face masks for anyone that needs it. In the survey data, many families lifted up that they could provide a face mask for their child. That's great. Thank you so much for that. But should you need one, we will be able to provide a face mask for your child. We are going to work in, I am picking up just a little bit of feedback. I don't know if someone accidentally clicked their unmute mic. So if you could just double check that, that'd be great. Thanks so much. Hand hygiene. So we are building into every school across the district universally frequent times throughout the day where students and staff will have access to wash their hands. And so we do note that that structure is being built, and how schools do that will be sort of individually based, but there is a universal expectation that all schools build in frequent times for students to not only wash their hands, but also have readily accessible hand sanitizer. So that will be available in the classrooms, in the hallways, and in the common spaces. Again, we want to continue to promote that if you or your child's not feeling well, then stay home, and know that that we want you to stay home because we want you to be safe, and we want you to be on the mend as quickly as possible, but also because we can support you virtually. We're very confident about our virtual learning platform, and we feel like we can provide you with a robust, rigorous, and very relevant and positive experience virtually. So if you're not feeling well, we definitely want you to be able to stay home and quickly get yourself onto the mend. Lunch in classrooms. At our elementary levels, we already provide breakfast in the classrooms. We are looking to do the exact same thing for lunches, but I don't want you to think that it's limited to the actual classroom space. We will likely have students and staff eating in virtual spaces in order to maintain that physical distancing, that safe distancing environment. And so students might be eating out on the playground, they might be eating out in the hallways or in common spaces. And so the primary point of that is what we're not going to do is actually bring students down to the cafeteria for breakfast or lunch just for students to be in a space where we lose the physical distancing safeguard. So that will not happen at any of our schools. There is a universal expectation for schools to create schedules and spaces for students and staff to spread out during lunches. Technology access. So we are moving to a one-to-one learning platform whereby we will assign every student a device. We've had lots of great questions around, can my student bring his or her own device? And the answer to that is actually no, and for a very specific reason. We have tech specialists at every campus, and of course we have a centralized, at central office, a technology specialization team that can actually remote in on a district device to support any sort of maintenance that might be needed. And so if there's an issue with the device itself, we have folks that actually can support that device at the school level, but also we could remote into that device to support it should we not be able to get physically clear, near the device itself. We can't do that if it's a personal device, and so we can't support it if the device is not working. So that's the reason why we will assign every student a device. Preschool and kindergarten students actually will be able to have a tablet. We do know that sometimes the clunkiness of a laptop is not the best supportive device for a student in kindergarten or preschool. And so we have ordered tablet devices for our preschool and kindergarten students. We will continue to work on strengthening the infrastructure of our internet connectivity. So for a district-wide Wi-Fi. So we were able to connect more than 5,000 families in the spring to a reliable internet connectivity source. That is still a challenge, though. I will lift that up for you, that we're not completely there. We still have about a little less than 6% of our families that don't have reliable, sustainable internet connectivity. So we are working with local business leaders, some private funders, and our state government on trying to create a comprehensive, reliable, and sustainable internet connectivity for all families. And so that's incredibly important for us as we move forward. If your child qualifies for transportation and you choose the hybrid model, we will be providing transportation. It is important to note, however, that we cannot provide a 6-foot distance on the buses for students to and from school. The reason for that is on a 77 passenger bus, which is our largest vehicle for transportation, if we did 6.5 or 6 feet distancing for students on the bus, we could only get 11 students actually on the bus at one time. And that's just not viable to be able to get students to and from school in a timely manner so that they can actually experience in-person learning. So it is important to note that if your child qualifies for busing and that's a service that you need, we can definitely provide it. We just can't guarantee that we're going to be able to have 6 feet of distance on that bus. We will safe distance students, and so if you have a brother and sister or siblings on the bus, they will sit together. But you will not be sitting with another student from another family on a particular bus seat. So we will do our very best to mitigate that. Students and drivers will be required to wear masks, face masks on buses. And so in order to also help mitigate any potential spread. So we do have some safeguards and some measures in place, but we just can't guarantee that there's going to be a 6-foot distance on the buses to and from school. We are going to be providing meals for every student that qualifies, whether you choose the virtual or in-person hybrid option. So please know that if you receive meals in Des Moines Public Schools, we will provide that for you. In the spring, we had meal sites, close to 40 of them, set up throughout the city. In the fall, it'll be very, very similar, except for every meal site will be in the comprehensive school. So again, if regardless of what school is your home campus, there will be meals provided for your student, whether you choose the virtual or the in-person option if you qualify for meals. Childcare. This is, as you know, a major challenge, and it's been one of the major topics of conversation and planning, because we recognize that even in a hybrid model, if you have just 1 or 2 days of students actually in person, that leaves the rest of the week and most of the week that your student wouldn't be, that they would be at home. And so our Metro Kids program ran 30 sites last year. We absolutely expect to be able to run 30 sites again, if not more. There's lots of details that come into that, however. And so we are working with the state and DHS to get a full day childcare option. But there's some approvals that have to get done. That has to be approved by the state. And the fee structure also has to be approved by the state and our own school board. So we still have some more challenges and hurdles to cross with that, but we are working through that process as quickly and as efficiently as possible. In combination with that, we are working with all of our licensed childcare providers throughout the city so that we can provide parents with a childcare site map that delineates all the childcare providers throughout the city and their capacity to support students throughout the day and in the evening hours. Included in that are all of our program partners, which includes Boys and Girls Club, YMCA, CFUM, and there are several others that offer programming throughout the day. So we are working with each of these organizations in order to be able to provide you with a comprehensive view of opportunities where your child might find some supervision or some structure if they need that during the day when they're not in their in-person learning environment. So we are working on that diligently and feverishly, and we will get that information to you as quickly and accurately as possible. So an important date is July 13th, and that's coming up just on Monday. And again, the reason why this is significant in our online registration process, which opens up July 13th, we're going to ask you, and I know that it's a month and a half out, but we're going to ask you to think about what's best for your family and your dynamics and your needs in terms of a virtual support model, a fully virtual model for instruction and learning, or a hybrid model. And again, we're asking that you make this decision with knowing that your child's going to be in this environment for the first semester. And I know that is stressful to think about trying to create a decision as quickly as Monday about where your child might receive his or her supports and learning opportunities for an entire semester, knowing that we're a month and a half out. The reason for that is because if we move towards a change in the middle of the semester from one learning environment to the next, that does impact staffing. And so we do need to move staffing to and from throughout the district in order to support the needs of families and the option that you choose. And in addition to that, our student information system, Infinite Campus, in order to change students' rosters and which teachers are assigned to them, it would require us having to go through and change every student's rostered classroom in our system every time there's a change that's made. And so it's incredibly cumbersome, and that's why it takes typically around 6 to 10 months to fill out and build a full master schedule in a typical year. When you pull all the student course requests in and then you begin to assign and create a master schedule of class rosters, it's about a 6 to 10 month process in a typical year. We're building this out in 3 months, and so that so that's why we're asking families to commit to a full semester. Please know, though, that if you have an individual situation, obviously that is unique, and you think that you need to change prior to the semester, we will absolutely look at that on an individual basis, and we will weigh what we are able to do and offer you in terms of a switch. So just know that it's yes, we're asking you to change or make a decision for the semester, but we also know that there are unique circumstances that come up, and we will absolutely listen to those and do our very best we can to meet those needs. So beginning Thursday or beginning Monday on the 13th, you're going to be asked to choose that 100% virtual option and or the hybrid learning model for your child. Again, we know that every family situation is unique, and we want to be able to provide you with as much information as we possibly can in order to be able to make this decision. But that begins as soon as Monday. For many families that we've already heard from, that they already know that either the hybrid of any sort or the virtual, they already know that that's going to be the best fit for their family. And so we're asking you to make that decision as early as next week. We do have time, which is typically expected, so I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen now for some Q&A, some live Q&A. We'll do our very best to answer any questions that we can live. I will tell you that there are some times that our answer is going to be, we don't know yet. And so a lot of the questions, as you might imagine, are questions that we need to hear, because it actually will inform any planning that moves forward today and even on Monday. So any updates that we have, we will post to our website, and we will communicate out to you via School Connects, through that dual translation platform, and through our email and our media sites. So what we'll do now is if you have a question, and I already see that some people do, if you will click on that little hand in the middle, and as I scroll through, I will see your hand up, and I will call on you. That way we just don't speak over one another. But if also you'll continue to place your questions and your concerns and thoughts in the chat, we will do our very best to answer those as we can. So right now I'm going to scroll through for hands, and when I land on one, I will certainly just call on that person. So Mary Roth, you have a question.
Hi, thank you so much for your transparency and leadership and commitment to our students. It is very appreciated. My question is, I'm interested in the K-8 virtual option. Where can I see more detail around what that entails?
Great question. And Noelle, add any details to this that I might miss, but we are actually kind of, we're building out, and we expect to have that as early as next week, a sort of a day in the life of what does it look like to be in a virtual environment, and what does it look like to be in any of these hybrid environments. And so here's what your student will be doing on any given day, and it'll feel, again, very, very different because it's mandatory. So there are some attendance will be taken every day. Assignments will be submitted via online. Noelle, is there some specifics that you want to lift up that I'm probably not going to be able to hit?
No, that's accurate. We do have a website set up for virtual campus, and it doesn't have a lot of information yet on K-8 because we're still building that. But yeah, check back next week, because every day we're getting closer to having more clarity to help you make an informed choice.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thanks for your question, Mary. That was a great question. So again, if you've got questions about the virtual, about just what is it going to look like and feel like for my student, like what's a day in a life, we are working to put that on the website next week so that you can have a more informed understanding of what it's going to feel like for your student. I'm going to continue to scroll through here. I've got Heather Moore.
Yeah, I just had a quick question. Like in middle school, are the kids still going to be switching classes throughout the day? And is there going to be the same kids in each class or different kids in each classroom if you do switch classes?
Thanks for that question. Sarah, are you on the call? Or Noelle?
Yeah, I don't think she is, but I'll do my best. I don't know what the most current conversations have been, but I know we're considering both options. We want to obviously reduce the mixing of kids as much as possible. So we are considering both and just working through the logistics of what makes the most sense. So I know as soon as we get more accurate enrollment numbers, we can get a lot firmer on what master scheduling looks like.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
Great question. Thank you for that. And that is important to note too, that as families make their choices beginning as early as Monday, the number of families that choose virtual versus the number of families that choose the hybrid does make a significant difference, right, in how we might serve students in both environments. And so an example of that, I mean, if at a particular school, if 20 to 30% of the students choose virtual in that school, the enrollment capacity for the hybrid is going to look and feel a little bit differently. And so we will make adjustments to that learning environment for those students based on those numbers. So it is important that we stay on top of that.
Okay, and I guess a follow up real quick. If you have like twins, are they going to be able to be, like in the same class if you do, limit kids? You know what I mean? Like if you don't do a lot of the same moving around.
Yeah, that's a great question. So yes,
Okay.
we will look at absolutely all of those accommodations and make those fit your needs.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Great question. I see. I don't want to mispronounce it. Karanme. Karanme, is that right? Do you have a question?
It's not.
Yes, I just heard you.
Okay. Hello. I'm sorry. Yes, you got it right. You can call me Kiran also. So my question is about that term system, and what does that exactly mean? Like 3 to 4 classes, and what is the 4x4 schedule? And does that apply to a student who is taking all major courses in Central Academy except for the band at Roosevelt?
Matt,
Yeah,
I can
well,
take that if you want me to.
ahead.
So essentially, what we discovered in our full virtual school the last couple years is, understandably, students really struggled keeping up with a full course load of 7 courses online. And so what that school did and what we're adopting for this coming year for everyone, including Academy, is a term system 4x4. So what that means is students will take 3 to 4 classes at one time. Q1, and then they'll take another 3 to 4 classes at one time for Q2. So overall, the semester course load will equal what it is now. It's just saturating a smaller course load for a single term. So we're hoping that will help both our teachers and our students navigate a new platform that comes with a whole new set of demands.
Oh, thank you so much.
Sure. Thank you for your question. That's a great question. Josh Schilling.
Yes, my question is, I know that you currently are not sure how band and how PE are going to work for high schoolers. My question is, will you have that information available for us before we have to make a decision on virtual versus hybrid? Because that's an important factor for us making that decision.
Yeah, great question. Thank you for that. Yeah, we don't have a definitive answer on that yet. We are working on that, but we will get that to you as soon as possible. We do anticipate having a significant number of these questions, and that being one of them, answered hopefully as early as next week. The other thing that I would actually add to that, because it's related to your question, is online registration begins on Monday. You don't have to make the selection on Monday. And so we know that many families, there's questions that you need answers to, just like as the one that you just presented, that would help inform your decision. And so we're trying to get those to you as quickly as possible. We are hoping and asking families to make their decision by the end of July for sure, because once we start getting into the months of August, finalizing our master schedules and getting rosters built, then becomes a very time critical sort of situation. So, but we do recognize that you're going to need more answers to make an informed decision. So, long-winded answer to be able to tell you, hopefully very, very soon, and very much potentially as early as next week.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Great question.
Matt, I did post it in the chat, but I wanted to offer a little more information on that. So we will have the course offerings made public on what will actually be offered in the full virtual model, as well as in the hybrid model next week as well, because we know that students we will work from their current course selections that they selected prior to leaving us in the spring. and then just adjust from there based on what we can and can't offer. So the list is still pretty darn comprehensive, but you'll have access to that also when you go to register here in the next couple weeks.
Yeah, thanks, Noel. I see a question from Jonathan Cobalt.
Oh, sorry, I was muted there and didn't realize it. I've also wondered about this, as somebody asked this in chat, for the attendance being taken for the virtual part of the learning, even if you're hybrid model, how does that work in terms of, like, if your child has to do their coursework in the evening, is there going to be like a mandatory time? Do we know?
Yeah,
I think it's
let me,
oh, go ahead.
sorry. When we say attendance is taken, there is an accountability piece, but how attendance gets taken is different than a traditional attendance where we all sit and mark ourselves present. The virtual idea is that it's flexible. So the accountability comes in students submitting evidence of the learning that they're engaging in. And so we'll monitor attendance almost more through participation of, are they submitting the assignments that we're asking them to do and demonstrating mastery of the content, and issuing grades and feedback based on that. So attendance, we say attendance, but it actually looks a little bit different, knowing that students are going to engage in that content at various times throughout the day based on individual schedules.
Okay, thank you.
Great question. Libya, see your hand up.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. I have a preschooler who I was thinking of sending, hopefully 4 days a week. And will they have recess? Did anyone talk about that?
I don't know that we actually lifted up specifically in the chat, but yes, we are looking absolutely at, and not just at preschool, but also at, obviously our elementary schools as well too, around students, the need for students to be outside, particularly at any time that weather's permitting, to get students outside, to get them spaced out, and to run, to do all of those physical activities that we want students to be able to do that contribute to a well-rounded education, but also it contributes to them being ready to learn. So yes, ma'am, long-winded answer, but yes, we are building in absolute recess time.
All right, thank you.
Great question. We may have time for one or two more, about 3 minutes out, and we want to hold true to the time. And so around that 11 o'clock hour, Dr. Ahart will close us out, but I see a hand up from Jody.
Hi, thank you so much. So, when I go to the dentist, to a doctor, to a salon, they take my temperature quick with, the ear thermometer with the little plastic sleeve. I thought that would be a really amazing preventative measure if we can hire temperature takers at each of the front entrances of the schools for the hybrid model. That way we're preventing anybody from coming in the building that has temperature.
Yeah, thanks for that, Jody. That's a great suggestion. We have Diane Gladson is our coordinator for nurse services. And of course, as Dr. Ahart mentioned, we work with a number of professionals in our medical community. And so we are still fleshing out all the details of the sort of pre-screening that we'll be doing before students and staff enter into our buildings each day. And so, but we will definitely take that suggestion and add that to the list of conversations to flesh out a fully detailed plan for you. Great question.
Okay,
great.
thank you.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Scrolling through to see. So we're about a minute out, and I don't see an additional hand. I'm sorry if I missed it, but before Dr. Ahart closes this out, I just wanted to be able to say it's not lost on us the hardships that this is creating for each of you, and we know that there's a lot of difficult decisions that you're going to need to make, and we just want to impress upon you that we are hurting with you. We know that there's a lot at stake here, and we're in it with you. We care about you, we care about your child, and we care about our staff, and want to make sure that everybody is safe. And I'm not shy about ever saying it, but we love and appreciate the grace that you're providing, and thank you for what you're doing as families and members of DMPS. We will continue to do our level best to support every need that you have uniquely, and we're committed to doing that. Dr. Ahart.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Noel. Thank you, everyone, for your gift of time today and your listening, your fantastic questions. Remember that if you think of a question that didn't quite pop into your head over the last hour, please go to our website at dmschools.org/return to learn. And you will find a frequently asked questions page there where you can submit questions if you didn't get a chance to do that today. We're keeping all of the questions that we're recording all of these sessions. We're capturing all of the questions. We're answering all the questions in that frequently asked questions page on our website. So that is changing literally on a daily basis. So please check back in frequently. There are some questions still that we couldn't answer, but that we're actively working on, and we will get as much of that information to you as quickly as we can so that everybody is best positioned to make the very best decision for their student or students at the time of registration. I again want to echo Matt's sentiments that it's not lost on us how much of a strain this interruption in normal school operations has impacted our families and our staff. And we want nothing more than to bring all of our students back into our schools with our staff as quickly as possible. But we are going to continue to emphasize health and safety and make sure that we're going to underpromise and overdeliver. We'll continue on a daily basis to be looking for ways that we can provide more opportunity, more face time, and more broader opening of our schools as quickly as possible. Thank you very much. Have a safe weekend. And we look forward to continuing to engage with you as we work through this very unique start to the 2021 school year.